Hello everyone, this is Undiga, the Niger fertility lawyer. Today, I'd like us to say a few things about gamete donation, the legal implications of gamete donation, how to go about it, and some of the considerations that you need to bear in mind. Gamete donation basically is a situation where an intending parent or intending parents need to use the eggs or sperm of somebody else to conceive a child because they cannot use their own, either because they do not have any at all or they're not producing eggs or sperm of the right quality. In such a situation, the doctor might recommend that you use a donor egg or a donor sperm, or in some cases, even a donor embryo. But we'll talk about donor embryos later on. Let's just talk about a situation where you have to use a donor egg or a donor sperm to conceive your child. In most cases, the fertility clinic will make the arrangements for you to source the donor egg or the donor sperm. And it's very important to bear in mind that the child that will be conceived through the use of donor egg or donor sperm will be genetically connected, genetically linked to the gamete donor, to the egg donor or the sperm donor. And what it means is that that child will share genetic history with that person. It's therefore very important to ask a number of important questions of whoever is providing the donor egg or the donor sperm and to collect that information and retain it. This information needs to be about where, how the egg or the donor egg or sperm was sourced, what screening was done before they selected that egg or sperm donor, how much of the medical history of that person was collected from that person. For instance, it would be necessary to know whether that person has a history of diabetes, hypertension, or hepatitis in their family, or glaucoma. These are important pieces of information that you will need to have at your fingertips in order to make medical decisions or advise any medical practitioners who are taking care of your child in the future. Just the same way people, if you went to hospital, they would ask you, is there anybody in your family that had high blood pressure? Is there anybody in your family that has diabetes? You need to be able to answer those questions on behalf of your child. And so the only way you'll be able to provide that kind of accurate information is if you've collected the information in the first place. And I know that a lot of intending parents do not want to have any evidence of the fact that their child was donor conceived, but you need to consider the very important factor that in the future you might need that information, and such information might be relevant for you to make informed decisions about your child's medical treatment. Another factor that we need to consider in gamete donation is the fact that under Nigerian law, if the paternity or maternity of a child is in question, the courts are in a position to order the running of a DNA test. Now, what that means is that if for any reason a DNA test needs to be run on a donor conceived child, that DNA test will reveal the fact that the child is not genetically connected to either the mother or the father, which might have grave legal implications for such a child, especially if their parents were no longer alive at the time. So it's very important that if you decided to use a donor egg or a donor sperm, that you consider the long-term implications of that for your child, and not only for your child, for your family, especially if you are no longer around. So these are some of the things that you need to sit down with an experienced legal practitioner and think through. I'm not saying that egg donation or sperm donation should be avoided. What I'm saying is that it should be carefully considered and preparations and precautions put into place to protect such a child, because sometimes those questions might come up in a context that you don't expect, or in a context that you have no control over, and the implications might be quite serious for your child. Following on from that is also the question of how you select a gamete donor. There are two types of gamete donation. Known gamete donation, where the identity of the gamete donor is known to the intending parents, and unknown anonymous gamete donation, where an anonymous gamete donor is provided either by the fertility clinic or by another provider. And yes, it's important to know that you can also buy donor eggs and donor sperm from some big international cryobanks, so for example, cryos, where you can go ahead and you're given the opportunity to choose the ethnicity and other features of the egg donor or the sperm donor. In some people prefer to know their egg donor or their sperm donor, and there are some very important implications to consider for yourself, for the future relationship between you and your egg or sperm donor, for the future relationship between the gamete donor and your child, and also the way in which the dynamic of the family relationship will be affected by the fact of that donation. And so there's no right or wrong answer. You have to make a very careful personal analysis of your situation and decide whether or not it's in your best interest to go for an anonymous donation or an open or known gamete donation. In summary, what I would say is that when you go into the clinic, make sure you ask the right questions, collect the right information, retain that information for yourself for future use. And you also need to consider very carefully whether or not you're going to disclose to your child the fact that they were donor conceived, and whether any other person in your family needs to be aware of this fact. I hope you took value in this video. Take care out there.